when spot price moves above plus GEX and COI? What's the anticipation, or have we back tested what happens after that? So basically, what's next after you reach those? He used the words maxed out, but once you reach those higher levels where the call speculation is, I guess you could say, maxed out at that point. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't hear what Taylor or you said. To anytime plus GEX gets above COI, it's a bearish. We not only have we back tested that, we've seen it. Sometimes the speculators just get out over their skis. That's the big deal. That's the big problem. So they open up a bunch of calls that are above where COI is, and they get too euphoric on whatever they're doing. What happens is that's where fear comes in, because price, for whatever reason, as you start eroding the overhead, price will start coming down, and all of a sudden you'll see those calls come out of the complex as they close them. So typically with plus GEX above COI, not a good setup. It's not a bullish setup. You might see price move up, but that's not the standard. The standard would be people are panicking and will eventually get out, and price is going to come back down because they're too optimistic on the price. So remember, COI has nothing to do with gamma, has nothing to do with options. It's, well, anything with the Greeks. It's purely answering the question, where are the majority of calls in this case, COI? Where are the majority situated? What strike through the entire option chain? And the web tool, you can go in and you can play with the expiries and see what that looks like. All it is just a mapping of what people are speculating at. It's just a target. It's where they think price will go because they're going to eventually get paid as we move towards it. That's the easiest way to look at it. Plus GEX is the same thing, but it's shorter dated. Plus GEX is where short dated instruments are targeting price to move. And as you move towards plus GEX, you have a disproportionate effect on deltas because it's gamma. And when that is above COI, especially in a limited expiry, like a single day expiry or a weekly expiry where you've got all the days turned on, people are getting out over their ski tips. So I would be inclined to short as we go up, depending on what we see, especially if we're really stretched above transition. That's kind of a tell that things are going to turn. And I would also look at the amount deltas on a day over day and just see if they're coming out of the complex. And if they are, what's going to happen. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Paul. So is the reverse also true? If the negative GEX is below the POI, and that would also means that it's not sustainable? Because we recently saw that in the SPX, right? It was around 4,200.
Yeah, the SPX is a different animal.
Okay.
Because the SPX actually, for the combo complex with all the expiries turned on, has had a COI and POI for a long, long time. It had it locked down at 4,000. That's institutional money. That money's not going anywhere, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, there's roughly 12, 13, 14 million contracts in the SPXAs. The AM settled, and then all the balance is the PM settled. And so if that SPXA isn't moving around, but yet it's there, right? It's exerting its influence on the dealers. It's exerting its influence, but it's not moving around. It's something that has to be navigated, right? So I would treat the SPX differently. But for stocks, we generally see, for the most part, we generally see plus GEX, COI, more or less coincident at the same strike. P-trans, 0, N-trans, and then N-GEX above POI. When N-GEX gets below POI, it probably pays attention. You should be paying attention to where COTMP is, because what we have found is when we're stretched down below POI, we only stay there about 5 days on average. And then we reverse upward because people basically take their profits and go. And that 5 days typically corresponds to a weekly cycle on an expiry. So you'll see the expiry come off, you're removing about a bunch of puts, and boom, that frees the complex to move up a little bit. And away we go.
Okay. So on the first scenario, just using Nvidia as an example, right now the COI is around 500, and looked at the latest Think or Some file, but I believe the plus GEX was around 470 maybe.
Okay.
So we crossed plus GEX 470 and we are almost testing the COI, which is close to 500. Just for the sake of our discussion, let's say those levels don't change, but spot goes to 540, but GEX and COI don't change. Then what happens?
Well, I think you can answer this question, right? So let's break that down. So spot is above both GEX, plus GEX, and COI.
Yeah.
Are those are the dominant levels that you're talking about for call concentration. Do we agree on that? Okay.
Yeah.
So with that being the dominant call concentration for the complex, are they in the money or are they out of the money?
In the money.
Exactly. Deeply in the money in this case. So now if they're in the money, we all know so let's back up. When do you think those speculators bought those calls and placed them at COI and POI? Were they in the money or out of the money when they bought them?
Probably out of the money.
Out of the money. Almost definitively out of the money. We see it every day. So now they're going to get rewarded. Now price can, for whatever reason, price can go up. People continuing to open puts, close calls, or open calls, close puts, would be the number one reason that price would exceed the rubber band. And I'm going to presume, just because of the way we define and the way we created NGEX or NP-trans and PGEX, PGEX will always be above P-trans, equal or above. Transitions below us. So why that's important is what you're describing is a situation where you're way up over transition. So the rubber band is really stretched. And further, all these people who speculated to the upside are now in the money. So I would imagine what you're describing also, just knowing how I created COTMC, I would imagine you're flirting with COTMC and or you're above COTMC, which is the propensity to monetize those calls. I would be looking to go short if it were me in Nvidia. Is that what you're saying Nvidia looks like right now?
I think it's around 490-ish. So I think the last time I saw something similar was Netflix maybe. The COI was around 400 and the spot was maybe 350, 360-ish and the positive GEX was somewhere around 350, 360. It breached both of them, but I didn't know what the expected behavior was. I'm still learning. So I was trying to figure out, okay, it already went to 410, 420, but COI is already breached, plus GEX is already breached. Obviously, there will be some monetization, but weekly calls kept coming in. I don't know if that's what kept them going, but it kept going up, so that's why I was curious what happens.
Yeah, no, that's, you're asking a great question. I'm looking at Nvidia right now and I don't see anything that's out of the ordinary. I see both PGEX for this Friday's expiry. I see PGEX at 500 and COI at 500 and we're below it and that's a normal setup.
Yeah.
In fact, we're right at the top of transition, which makes perfect sense, right? This is kind of the no pressure zone, low pressure zone for a stock, right? So, as far as Nvidia is concerned, it looks okay. And then Netflix and FLX probably looks similar. I don't know. I haven't looked at these recently. I probably should. I've got positions in. Okay, so 460. Okay, all right. So let's share the screen here and let's take a look here. This is interesting. You bring up a very good question. Let's take a look. All right, so Netflix, all expiries. So there's nothing wrong with an all expiry analysis. There's nothing wrong with an all expiry analysis. You can see down here, this little green bulb down here, this is COI. This is the call open interest. This is the largest for all these expiries that are selected, all the way out to 2026. This strike, 400, is where effectively people at some point, we presume they did it when they were out of the money, like I was talking about, and now they are deep in the money. Deep in the money. Why is that a big deal? Well, if this yellow line starts coming down, well, there's two things here. So there's when they expire, do they want to get assigned? Because they will be assigned at 400, which is a great thing if you're up at 460, right? That's some cash. So that part's good if they have the capital in their account to be assigned and don't get forced liquidation. So that's one thing, but this is all expiries. But this setup, so transitions here, plus GEX is here. There's a lot of people sitting down here, but we have COI has no information in time. It doesn't contemplate time. COI is just a pure answer to the question, at what strike, if I flatten all of the expiries, at what strike, when I add up all of the 460s and all the 400s, at what strike do I have the most calls? Because that is where everybody's sitting for the long-term speculation. So how do you handle that? Well, let's look at an individual expiry. Here's POI, that's normal. Here's COI, that's normal. Here's plus GEX. They're coincident. Absolutely normal structure, transitions right here, tight, well-defined, lined in the sand. This Friday looks picture perfect. I mean, it looks textbook. So we're sitting right at a gamma strike. We're probably not going to advance a lot between now and Friday in Netflix. If we do fall, we'll probably fall only down to about 445, and then we enter into a negative regime because where the puts start taking over. Netflix through Friday looks clean. That scenario that we were talking about with the 400, these people would be safe if we pulled back. They wouldn't care. It's these people who are going to care because they're going to go, because we all know moneyness matters, they're going to get worried, and that's more in the moment of what we have to worry about. So I would say the answer to your question is time frame matters. So if you're looking at a single day or a single expiry slice and you see the setup that we just saw where you've got massive COI down here and this, and you've got this like huge funky setup, yeah, that's you're right. That's weird. Bring it into something that you can now start dissecting the if-thens and start putting it in context of like right now. And then this is this Friday's expiry. I'm going to hold down the control key, turn on the next one here, and you can see I'm not moving the bubbles. They're staying where they are. The shape is the same. You can see that literally the 17th has the most influence compared to the 24th in the pie graph here. That's important. And I'm just going to add in through December just to see, do we change? We change the uncertainty through the transition area, but the bubbles remain constant more or less, right? They changed a little bit, but they're not. I mean, we saw end trans drop down. Big picture, this doesn't scream to me that Netflix is going to go wild here unless we see more calls get opened for whatever reason, more speculative to the upside. So it's going to, the status quo is in being at plus GEX here and being at COI for the expiries that we're seeing here. There's nothing really to push us up. As we push up, we'll get pulled back because effectively there's no new stuff causing a dealer response.